I was a misogynist until I had a daughter. I want to say that clearly and not dress it up because I think the only way this is useful to anyone is if I'm honest about what it actually looked like. I grew up in a pretty average suburb in the 90s and early 2000s. The men in my family weren't cruel. Nobody was openly terrible. But there was a way women were talked about or talked around that I absorbed without ever being asked to examine it. My dad made jokes. My uncles made jokes. My friends at school talked about girls like they were a separate, confusing species that existed primarily to be judged. I participated. I was funny about it. I was the kind of guy who thought having female friends made me one of the good ones, while still genuinely believing that women were more emotional, less rational, and ultimately just less interesting than men. I held this view comfortably for years without calling it what it was. I didn't think of it as misogyny. I thought of it as observations, things that were obviously true if you looked around. I was 20 when my girlfriend found out she was pregnant, terrified and excited and immediately certain I wanted a son. When the ultrasound came back and they said it was a girl, I remember smiling because I knew I was supposed to. Then sitting with this quiet disappointment in the car on the way home that I didn't tell anyone about for years. I thought a daughter would be a stranger to me. I expected something foreign, someone I'd love from a distance without ever quite connecting. Then she arrived and I held her, and I didn't think about any of that. I'm not going to say it was some lightning strike transformation where I became a different person in the delivery room. I wasn't. I was still the same guy for a while after she was born. Still said stupid things, still thought stupid things. What changed was slower, gradual, the way real change usually happens without a clear moment you can point to. She started developing opinions, loud ones. By the time she was 4, she had strong feelings about what she would and would not wear, what music played in the car, what she would eat, and what was completely off the table. She was funny in this entirely unself-conscious way, not performing humor, just saying exactly what she thought, and it happened to be genuinely hilarious. She was a full person from very early on, in a way I hadn't anticipated and couldn't have predicted. She's 16 now. She listens to the same rap I grew up on and argues with me about which albums actually matter. She makes jokes that make me genuinely question my parenting decisions. She beats me at video games and makes sure I know about it for the rest of the day. She's sharp in a way that catches me off guard sometimes, the kind of smart where you make a lazy argument and she quietly dismantles it without making a production of it. She has her own taste, her own opinions, her own fully developed sense of what she thinks is worth caring about. She is exactly the kind of person I would have been best friends with at her age, and she still gets treated the way I used to treat girls. I started noticing it in middle school. The way certain boys talk to her versus how they talk to each other. The way she'd come home with stories and tell them matter-of-factly, like they were just weather. Things that happened, not things that required a lot of comment. And I realized she'd already learned not to make a big deal of it. She'd already absorbed the lesson that this was just part of the deal. Last year, a boy in her class told her she was pretty good at math for a girl. She mentioned it at dinner, just dropped it in between other things. And I sat there thinking about every time I'd said something like that as a teenager and genuinely believed I was being complimentary. I thought I was acknowledging an exception. I thought that was a kind thing to say. I didn't know how to explain to her that I used to be that exact kid. I sat at that dinner table and couldn't find the words. I've thought about telling her the full truth, about sitting her down and being honest about who I was before she existed. I want her to know people actually change, not in a tidy redemption story way, but in a real way, where you gradually stop being able to look past what you'd been choosing not to see. I think that would mean something to her, but I also don't know how to tell my daughter that I used to be the kind of person she's been navigating her whole life. I'm still working out how to be genuinely useful to her, rather than just privately remorseful about myself. I think that's probably the more important work. I'm not sure I've figured it out yet.